can't
this
take
is
that
personal.
part out of the verse.
Yeah, I know. Me personally, this is like I take this spiritual. So when somebody in 55
You take
AD,
part spiritual and part physical.
no, what I'm saying, how I'm interpreting it is like, for example, the majority of believers that believed in Jesus Christ, but came after Jesus died, resurrected, and ascended in
Yeah, I
heaven.
get that, but I mean, you don't
That
think this is talking about when he taught the law.
no, I believe this is afterwards. But
So
I guess in the sense, I guess I could say yes and no. I believe it goes for all of it. I guess you could say then
yeah, I
because
mean, to me, it's both.
okay, then I would agree with that one because majority because like what I'm saying is like
What?
to take it literally only that way would to say well nobody in the church of
Well, I'm not
Ephesus could have
taking
done
literally
that.
only, but when I bring up the
Gotcha.
literal, you deny the literal, and I can't deny the literal. I mean, that's like
I
denying
got you.
Christ.
I mean,
I,
I would say the greater fulfillment would be the
Oh,
you know
obviously, but to deny the literal, the physical, I think is you're not going to show people
so,
the
I,
truth, and when you deny the literal,
so you're saying that Christ taught the law, correct?
he
talking about the
Is that
law of
magnified the law.
Christ.
He didn't teach Moses' law; he taught Christ's law.
right? And Zach is saying the same thing.
Well, no,
Right, but at a
what I
point, he
understand.
was denying that literally happened.
Well, because we were first, we went to Isaiah 11, and you would say that because of like the coastal lands and, you know, I guess I mean, is there any verses that actually say that like besides like a Roman soldier that was like living in the land or anything like that, like somebody from really far off came for Christ, like that went from an island or anything like that? I mean, the only thing I think of is like the kings from I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, I know it's pretty much just Jerusalem. You know, Jesus didn't really travel that far. Like, he didn't go.
Jesus said he came for the lost sheep of Israel,
Yeah.
and you're to only go out to the 12 tribes.
I mean, that's what it seems like. But I can understand Rob's point that, like, yes, you could say Isaiah 2 was the people going up. But then, I think the greaterness of it would be, you know, afterwards, like when the kingdom was truly established and when the apostles were like, hey, we're living in the last days, this is the people going up to the mountain of the house of the Lord, things like that. But again, I could take it both, so I would agree with that for sure.
Doesn't Hebrews say you have come to Mount Zion, the heavenly
Yeah,
Jerusalem?
yeah,
So there you
yeah.
go. I used to think as a dispensationalist, when I read every man will sit under his own fig tree, I used to picture every man sitting under a fig tree. How ridiculous. It means everyone who gets saved is individually saved. It's no longer a nation, it's father of many nations. It's a
And
spiritual thing.
anytime it talks about fig trees in the restoration passages of the Old Testament, it really referring to exactly what you just said.
Right. Yeah. You
Yeah, I
gotta
mean, it's just like in my Hebraic mindset, the thing is when we look at, like, for example, Isaiah chapter 2, man, I have that thing highlighted and, like, like super ready to happen in the future. Like, we're all going to be going up to Israel, to Mount Zion. It's truly something like physical, because when you take this verse with Isaiah 11 and other places in Jeremiah about like a physical gathering, like people literally leaving their homelands and going to Israel, that's like the mentality, like, hey, we're all going to leave our homes because we're just sojourners, and we're all going to go live in Israel for the 1,000-year millennium. That's the mindset of where I'm coming from. But now that I see, where what the true greater exodus is all about, is that wasn't the truth. That wasn't like we're going to be leaving our homes physically and be literally walking up a physical mountain to hear the word of God. That right there could be fulfilled when Paul went into the church of Ephesus and spoke the gospel, and people, were just changed by the hearing of the word of God right then and there, and them getting on their knees and repenting. That's them going up to the mountain of the house of the Lord to hear the words of Yahweh and to learn the law of Christ. Not something like literal, but I understand that people, they favor the literal, especially if it has something to do with like a future thing, because oh no, that couldn't be fulfilled when the church of Ephesus like became a body of believers. That's no way. This is something that's going to happen in our lifetimes. But then that goes along with this video that you're making the rebuttal of, like, that is the fullness of the Gentiles. That was when the time of the end, like that. This is it. The Gentiles coming into the body of Christ. You have I forget the other points, but I know that was one of them.
Yeah, fullness of the Gentiles, the viral pig. I pretty much that one. He does a really bad job on that one.
Which one was that one again?
The enviro pig. He says that the pig and the mouse have been combined together, and so you're going to eat them. But the consumed together is not talking about the pig and the mouse. It's talking about the people are getting consumed.
Yeah.
Together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really stretches that one.
Yeah, that one I would think was when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh. Because Isaiah 66 actually is like, well, you have to read from Isaiah 65, and that's the new heavens and new earth. So it's definitely not like, I guess, I don't know. I mean,
and then the other one that I wanted to find, and maybe you guys could help, because this got brought up another time, but I don't think anyone believed me, so I'll have to find it again. But he talks about the Rosetta Stone Age, talking about how we're getting to one language, and so now we can do anything against God. Yeah. Well, actually, I believe the Bible does say we will go to one language.
Oh, yeah,
I believe that is prophesied. Yeah. It's on
like
Zephaniah
3:9 or something. I think it's 3:9.
Is that language a spiritual language?
No, it's the Hebrew language.
Oh, gotcha. Well, all that time learning Greek when God spoke Greek.
No, God speaks angel talk. Come on, man. I think it's Zephaniah 3:9. If I'm not mistaken. And I do know, like, I think the next verse in the Masoretic text actually has, I think it's the only text in the whole entire Old Testament that has every character, like every Hebrew letter.
Yeah, Zephaniah 3:9. For then I'll turn the people a pure language, that they may call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent. And that was after the day of the Lord, is my understanding. I'll change people from other nations so they can speak their language clearly and call out the name of the Lord. So to me, English has taken over the world.
Well, in the TS 2009 version, it says, "For then I shall turn unto the peoples a clean lip, so that they can call upon the name of Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh to serve him with one shoulder."
Yeah, I don't have the footnotes for. Do you have the footnotes for what they mean by that? Oh, it says language right here. A clean language.
What verse is that again?
Zephaniah 3:9.
Are you done?
Is it prophesied anywhere else that you can think of? A lot of times it's good to have like.
No, this is the only one.
Yeah.
I just know, like, this one, I'm pretty sure it's either verse 10 or 11 that actually has, like, every single Hebrew letter. And I think that's the only verse, because that's, like, another Hebrew roots, like, a famous verse. That's why I remembered it, is that's, we're all going to be speaking Hebrew.
Yeah,
that's
it must
the
be
true
11, because it's got a lot more words in it.
Yeah.
Don't the KJV only people use that and say that that's the pure language of the King James Version? I think I've heard that before.
I mean, of course, that's what Jesus used.
Right. The Elizabethan language?
Come on, bro. Haven't you ever, read it before? It's magical.
Right.
Have you ever seen this verse, Matthew? Verse 12 in Zephaniah. So here comes all the destruction, the day of the Lord, and everyone thinks, okay, well, that's it. We're all in heaven. and that's it. We're on the holy mountain on earth, but it says, "I will leave thee a meek and lowly people."
Right.
So
Well, look what it says in Isaiah 49, talking about. First, it talks about Zion. Can a woman forget her
where you
nursing
at?
child? Isaiah 49, like around 15. It talks about children. All right, I'll just read 17. I'll read 18. Lift up your eyes, look around, and see all these gather together and come to you as I live, says the Lord. You shall surely clothe yourselves with them all as an ornament, and bind them on you as a bride does. For your waste and desolate places in the land of your destruction will even now be too small for the inhabitants, and those who swallowed you up will be far away. The children you will have after you have lost the others will say again in your ears, "This place is too small for me. Give me a place where I may dwell." Then you will say in your heart, "Who has begotten these for me? Since I have lost my children and am desolate, a captive, and wandering to and fro. And who has brought these up? There I was left alone, but these, where were they?" And then it talks about the nations in the next verse. So this is, again, the shift from Old Covenant to New Covenant. Other children that God is now, birthing. You must be born again. To me, like the whole Old Testament speaks of the spiritual time, like we talked about Ezekiel 37, of Jew and
So
Gentile,
what do you make of verse 26, the last one?
of Isaiah 49.
Yeah.
I will feed those who oppress you with their own flesh, and they shall be drunk with their own blood, as with sweet wine. All flesh shall know that I, the Lord, am your Savior and your Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. Anytime it says all flesh shall know, it's talking about Gentiles getting saved.
What do you think about them eating their own flesh, though?
I don't know if it's literal.
What would I tell you if it's written in 70 AD, the starvation was so much that they were eating their own babies?
Yeah, I do know that. Josephus wrote about it. That is true.
Can I ask a real quick question to Armand? Because this is distracting me. You there?
Sure. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I just got the premium version of my sword.
Okay.
So what I'd like, when you go to select a book, a chapter, and a verse,
Okay.
it's not centering on the verse. It's always taking me to the very beginning of the chapter. And sometimes when it's like verse 40 or something, I'm having to scroll up to find it. Is there a way where you can tell it in the preferences to just single out that verse or center it?
Ooh, let's see here. Like when you click on the particular verse?
Well, all right. So like when you're up at the very top and you go to like Isaiah 49:26.
Okay.
Well,
Isn't it
now
you pick 49 first and then 26 next?
Well, it actually took me there that time, but let me go to something else, like a new book.
Okay.
Something with a lot of verses in it.
Psalm
Okay,
119.
like Jeremiah 52:34. When I go there, okay, so I've gone from one book, which was Isaiah, to a new book, and I go to Jeremiah 52:34, and as soon as it selects that, it takes me to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 52, and I'm going to have to scroll down 34 verses to get to it.
Okay. Got you. I think I might know what that is. Let me see. Let me look at the settings real quick.
That does sound annoying.
Hold on one second. I think I've never messed with this setting, but I think I know which one it may be. Oh, oops, hold on. Let's see here. So let's see here. Go to your Go to you see where the Bible at the top with the little gear.
Yeah, I'm at preferences.
Okay. So scroll down. I think scroll down to the bottom or towards the bottom. Do you see where it says? Let's see here. It says something. Oh, scroll to auto select verse. Is that box checked or unchecked for you?
Is that in the display settings?
No. So like just at the top, the very top of the screen, it should just be preferences. Like I'm sorry, not perfect, but like okay. So you see, if you go to like kind of maybe the right side, you should see a Bible with a gear over it.
I see a gear.
Okay, so try clicking like at the top of the screen though, right?
It's at the bottom of the screen.
Okay, so not at the bottom. Not at the bottom. Look at the top of the screen.
The top of the screen, I see a Bible. I see a little tab where it shows what version, so I've got parallel on. And then I see the text, the book, chapter, and verse, and the arrows.
Okay.
And then I see something for a journal, and then I see like different versions, like the ABP, the ALXX, the BBE, and then oh, here it is. Okay, I see now the Bible.
So
yes.
click
Okay.
on that,
So
and then scroll down to auto select verse. Is that clicked on for you or no?
no, it's not. Okay, thank you so much.
No. Well, yeah. Try that and see if it works. I'm not sure. I haven't messed with that. Mine's actually unchecked, and mine doesn't do what yours does. But try that and see, real quick.
It could be you might just have to close the app and open it up too. Sometimes they can get funky.
So I'll go to Isaiah 66:24. No, it's still at verse 1. So yeah, but I can get out.
I think auto scroll is kind of when you like scroll up, it like scrolls down all by itself a little bit.
Yeah, and it very well might be. I'm just trying to think of like settings with. Hold on, let me see here.
Might want to just like I said, just try closing the app and open.
Yeah, I'm gonna close it up and get back into it. But thank you.
Might just be
no problem. If I find something else that doesn't work, then I'll definitely let you know.
Okay, thanks. It's funny when I'm in the book, it seems to auto scroll, but then when I'm in I choose to change to another book, it didn't do that. But so I'm going to go back to Jeremiah. Whoops.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, the way mine's set up, it is to go to the verse that you select. So I don't know why that is.
Nope, it's still not working.
Oh. When you pick the verse, do you have to pick like the book and then the verse?
Yeah, you pick. You go up to the top. You pick the book is in a whole list, and then the chapters are in another column, and then the text is in another column. And as soon as you click on the verse, then it takes you there.
Dang, I'm trying to see.
Okay, wait. I think there's another way. See if I go back to like Isaiah 66. No.
Horizontal scroll, parallel, different, summary, highlight. Okay, let's just look at this real quick. Okay, go to your preferences, just the regular gear.
Okay.
And you see where it says navigation history. Scroll down, like it's probably like halfway, maybe a little less than halfway. You see navigation history.
No, I see about, make a donation, upgrade to deluxe, copy, export, preferences, Health,
Oh, go
compact
preferences.
mode.
Hit preferences.
Okay.
Okay. Then scroll down to navigation
Navigation
history.
history. Uh-huh.
Does yours say
Scroll
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 to
to
verse?
verse.
Is it checked or unchecked?
Force checked.
Okay, yeah, mine's checked too. Okay, so yeah, that's not it then. Gosh, yeah, I'm not sure. Hmm. Yeah, as far as I know, it should go to the verse that you select.
I wonder if we should look a different way, like see if it's set for like beginning of like
So,
what you're
okay.
saying.
So, Armand, when you go from Jeremiah, the last book,
Mm-hmm.
so go there real quick
Okay.
to Jeremiah 52:34.
Okay, 52:34. Actually, let's just do this. Yeah, so mine always goes to the verse you select. It'll like scroll down to that verse.
Can you do that in parallel for me? Maybe
Yeah,
that's what
okay,
it is.
let me try it. Let me try it real quick. So you're using parallel view.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I bet you. Yeah, I don't think it works. I'm thinking it doesn't work like that in parallel view. Yeah, yeah. Mine always takes me to the top of the screen.
Okay, then
Yeah,
that's
so
fine.
that's what it is. Parallel view, you can't do it. I think it's because with parallel view, like the things can be offset.
They don't line
So
up, right?
yeah, they don't
Okay, so
necessarily
that makes
line up.
sense.
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks.
Yep.
Sorry to distract you guys, but I kind of wanted to get this. I've been kind of wanting him on here. I've had this for a week, and he's not showed up, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, is it working out for you?
Well, there's a few things like studies. Okay, so like, is there a way? Because I noticed that when I like bookmark verses,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to allow me to have like different sets of bookmarks. So if I want to bookmark things about full preterism, or I want to bookmark things about grace or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I might be able to just to have to manually do that in Journal, but
Oh,
there is
you can do that.
a manage verse list
Mm-hmm.
that I see, and I was able to put several things that Zach had shared with me the other day, but I'm not able to name these verse lists.
Right. You can't name the verse list, but you can actually do bookmark groups.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just real quick, go to hit the bookmark tab, the little blue, bookmark over the piece of paper.
Yeah, okay, I've
Okay,
got
and
it,
you
and I've got a list of bookmarks here
okay,
already.
top left corner, you see the plus sign?
No, I see manage bookmarks.
Okay.
Then I see a little copy thing, a little paste thing, a share, and a broom, and then I see add Jeremiah 52:34 and remove. That's it.
Okay, somewhere on
And
that screen, there should be a plus sign. Do you see a pencil or a minus sign, a red minus sign at all?
nope,
Can you scroll left or right on that? Maybe part of it's hidden.
nope,
Really?
not on bookmarks. Maybe on verse list I can do a plus, but it just says, okay, we'll add this verse to it.
No, there's supposed to be a plus. Like I'm looking at my screen right now. There's supposed to be a plus on the bookmarks.
Can you share your screen?
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Let me share. Now, are you on your phone or are you
This is
on
on
a
my
tab?
tablet that that my sword is on. I've got it on both, but
Okay. Let me pull this up real quick. Oh, dang. I don't know if it's going to let me share this. Oh, hold on. There we go.
Excuse me.
Okay. It's pulling up now. All right. Let me
can get this where I can go back and forth to different subject matter and everything, then you know, I'll be unstoppable. But
All right, so I'm about to share this now. So this is my book. So I'm just gonna go from here, but hold on. So if I go to the bookmark, like here at the bottom, right? So you click this. Okay, so click that, and you see how mine looks. It should look like this, like where
yeah,
there's a plus sign.
I don't see pluses. No, in fact, everything from that whole entire column that you've got there that's highlighted blue is not there for me.
He probably just has to add the manage bookmark icon.
Let me see.
I see up there where it says manage bookmarks, and then you see the copy and the paste and the copy with text and the share and the broom. And then right underneath that, I just see add Lamentations 116 and remove, and then the list of verses that I've already added. That's it. I don't have a plus.
Do you kind of see any kind of settings thing, like a three dots over to the right side of the screen or anything like that?
Nope.
No?
And on the bottom, I do have the AZ, and then I have the little disk symbol and the select and save and cancel. So maybe that's just a deluxe version.
Okay, what version did you get?
Premium.
Is the deluxe version over the premium, or I don't remember.
Yes, the deluxe is the
okay, so
most.
It may be that might be the case. Then I don't like. There's so many like differences and stuff I'm not sure about, but that might be the case.
Okay, I can do it manually through the journal.
Okay, yeah, and the verse lists are good too. Yeah, but you just can't put the titles. Or actually, I'm sorry, you can title the verse list though. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, you might not be. I don't know if you'll be able to do it on the deluxe or not, or the premium. But I know it allows you to do that on this.
Did you guys want to try to get any ideas for perilous times? That's the next little thing that on that video, that to go in order of that new Torah video. I don't know if you heard Armand, I was trying to do a debunk video on Zach Bauer did a video, I don't know, a year or two ago. I'm not really sure when he did it. 7 proofs were in the last times, and over like 800,000 people have watched it.
Oh wow! Yeah, I saw that you posted, and I actually watched the. I started watching maybe like I got to maybe number 1 or 2, and I just stopped watching it. But
so I get because a lot of times if you can get
you missed the Enviro pig. That was the best part.
Oh really? Yeah, I definitely didn't see that part. I heard you all talking about it, but I didn't see that part. Yeah.
But a lot of times, like with YouTube, if you can, like all I did was title it the exact same as his. And so if you title it like the exact same, then when they search his, they'll see that as like an alternative too.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So I thought I might be able to like show people like, you know, hey, we're not in the last times, and show them a few different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for me, it's like all that boils down to just got to get people to the time statements. Like all the other, you know, other stuff is irrelevant if you don't have the right time period.
For sure. Time statements are good too. I've made some on them, but I just thought, you know, this might be an easier one to get people because you have a captive audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of more of a marketing type thing, and then show the time statements, which I did in the first point that he made. I brought up one time statement, if not a few.
Mm-hmm.
But his next point was perilous times in 2 Timothy 3:1-4. In the last days, perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, talking about, you know, the selfies that we take, covetous, boasters, the proud, disobedient, without natural affection, talking about the homosexual LGBT really going big these days. Obviously that's what's going on now. So we're in the last times.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to find some scriptures that show, no, they were in the last times, or these perilous times, if we could show, how to debunk his idea that it's talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think what in terms of perilous times. I mean, well, one, I mean, this is one that most people probably wouldn't want to hear necessarily, but just going back to like Matthew 24, he lays out that they were going to go through more or less perilous times, and point to the fact that he's speaking to them about what they were going to experience. And you could look at 1 John, where he talks about many have gone out from us, and things like that. You can look at Hymenaeus and Philetus, leading people astray. Demas leaving the faith and falling in love with the present world, and various things like that.
The thing is also is that that word is Strong's 5467, and the Apostolic Bible Polyglot says ill-tempered.
For which word?
Perilous. 5467, and it says ill-tempered.
So what were you thinking? I guess I'm just not catching on to what you're hinting at.
Well, troublesome. It's not perilous is then that you're great and everything is like surrounding you, like storms and catastrophes and everything like that. That's not, our 21st century definition and understanding of perilous would be something like that. Whereas this is more like ill-tempered, savage, harsh.
Gotcha.
Not that it really makes any difference, but if.
Can you guys think of any examples that they were lovers of themselves? I mean, that's a big one for people. People would definitely say, obviously we're in that time now. Never been a time that people love themselves as much as they do now.
Hmm.
I don't think that the New Testament writers. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Paul gives evidence of that with, what is it? The gospel being preached, whether for selfish gain or for,
yeah.
Yeah. So clearly there were people who were preaching in terms of selfish gain. You see, what was it? People being drawn off by others, or like there was a guy in one of Paul's epistles who, actually, I'm sorry, it might have been Acts. I can't remember, but what was it? He was a ruler, I think, of the synagogue or whatever. He was supposed to be a Christian, but he didn't like the brothers, and he wouldn't permit, like, I think, the believers to meet with Paul or something. And I think there's a few examples, at least in scripture, on that. I'd have to think of these specific verses and whatnot, but I think there's a couple that are good ones for selfishness or. Yeah.
Do you primarily use the Logos, Armand?
What for the Septuagint, or
For like when you're looking at the my sword?
Oh no, I mean I'll typically read from the one that I'm working on, just so I can like make edits here and there, but then I'll like reference like other ones, or I typically always have compare pulled up though.
So what do you know about the TS 2009 version?
Do
you know anything about that one?
Yeah, like I actually have that in physical copy. Like that was my go-to Bible before I started seeing how, just off they were and how they were manipulating using
Oh,
various
okay.
texts to fit how they, I still use it. Like I still definitely use it. In some,
Now
oh, go ahead.
it's Masoretic, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like the Old Testament is definitely Masoretic.
Was that
And
that church out of Missouri that did that one?
no, no, I don't think so. No, that was it's this Institute for Scripture Research, and it was this guy who I think he's a South African guy, or he's dead now, but so I think he was a South African guy who basically, wanted to have the, Hebrew kind of roots, more or less, scriptures to be able to give to everybody. I think originally he was doing it for free, then he died, and then these people ended up, copywriting it and selling it, physical version, and they also have the hard copy or the digital version, the Scriptures 1998 and the 2009. So I think that's kind of the story behind it. But Old Testament is Masoretic, and then the New Testament is primarily, I want to say, Textus Receptus, but where they want to make their doctrine work, unfortunately, or want to like support the doctrine, they'll use like the Peshitta, and maybe even, I mean, yeah, Peshitta, or maybe even the some of the Alexandrian text type, but probably more so the Peshitta, where that just happens to line up with the Alexandrian text type. But it's I don't know. I don't think it's right the way they did that. Like for example, in what is it? Acts 9, or no, I'm sorry, I think yeah, Acts 21 or whatever, where it says they shall do no such thing except
Mm-hmm.
these four things. Yeah, some of the like the Alexandrian Peshitta text type, I believe, they don't say no such thing, but the uh, the writers, they follow or basically these translators, they follow the Textus Receptus all the way through, but then in that particular spot they use that, and then other places where it fits their doctrine more, and so it just, yeah, it definitely rubbed me the wrong way once I started to see that Hebrew roots was, or the Hebrew, the Torah movement, all that stuff was off.
Yeah, that's verse 25.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It's not there.
Yeah, and same thing with Acts 15. Yeah, I think there's
Mm-hmm.
something in Acts 15. It says something like troubling your souls, which we sent no command. There's a variant there which they also decided in that particular instance that they wanted to go with the Peshitta text, and it's just, yeah. It's not consistent. Let's put it this way: it's not consistent across the board, except for when it wants to fit their doctrine.
I found a couple of verses that fits that perilous times, talking about lovers of self and natural affection. Jude says, "But beloved, remember ye the words which were spoken before of the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ, how that they told you there should be mockers in the last time, who should walk after their own ungodly lusts. These be they who separate themselves, sensual, having not the Spirit." And then in Romans, it says, "For this cause God gave them up to vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use, that which is against nature, likewise the men." So there's a couple. I haven't found any other yet.
Trying to see if I've got any that I don't think I have any verse lists on it, but Oh, the former insincerely proclaimed Christ for selfish ambition, thinking they had add affliction to my chains. Uh, Philippians 1:16.
What version are you reading from?
What's that?
What version are you looking at?
Oh, this is the scriptures of the my translation. But let's see
Gotcha.
here. Another. See, Scriptures 2009. The former announced Messiah for selfish ambition, not sincerely thinking to add distress to my chains.
When they say former announced Messiah, are they saying denounce basically?
Uh, let's see. No, so like you're talking about like when it says the former.
Well, it says some indeed proclaim Messiah, but some also out of pleasure. Some, it said the former announced the Messiah from selfish. Are they saying that they're accepting Christ and denying their selfish ambition, or are they saying they're denouncing Christ and going after selfish ambition?
No, so they're announcing him and going after selfish image. So it says like the former. So the former would be some indeed proclaim Christ even out of envy and strife. So that's who he's referring to there. So he's saying that basically they're insincerely proclaiming Christ like out of their own selfish ambition, that first group. And then he also mentions there's obviously some that are
Well,
preaching out of goodwill.
I don't get what they're doing though. I mean, are they accepting Christ or not accepting Christ, or are they just
No,
accepting
so
Christ?
yeah, I mean the way I see it, they're definitely they're preaching Christ, but it's ultimately to draw people away to themselves. Just like he says, many will come in my name or come in my name saying, I am the Christ. Not that they're the Christ necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but that He is Christ. But ultimately, it's at us like just like today, right? Like you've got all these evangelists or whatever who preach Christ,
Have
right?
they have their name.
Yeah, yeah. But
So they
ultimately
could
they're
be
just
doing it
drawing a
like for
following to
money
this.
or some
Right.
other selfish reason. They're not doing it to
Yeah.
promote Christ.
Correct. But for fame,
Okay.
for money, or
Okay.
various whatever it
Yeah,
is
this
that
will be a
they're,
good one then too. I just want to make sure I understand it before I use it.
yeah.
What about this last one? So I've got a little bit for everything, but for the return of obedience. So the final one that Zach Bauer used in his video was that obviously we're in the last times because people are returning to the law of Moses.
Oh. Oh gosh, that's
Micah
Big
6:8,
topic.
yeah.
Hosea 6:6.
It's just the whole timing is. I mean, the timing is wrong. Like people were returning to, people were returning, or people were obedient to the law, or the Jews at least were obedient to the law during the first century more than ever before, because Christ was teaching them. Malachi, I think one that many people forget is that Malachi, let me see here, the very end of
Or
Malachi,
whatever, yeah.
right? Remember the law of Moshe, my servant, which I command to him in Horeb for all Israel, even the statutes and ordinance. Behold, I will send you Eliah the prophet before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. So like they obviously, once again, they were to keep the Torah, the Jews, before the terrible day came. So they were doing that. You could point them to Acts 21. Let's see here. where it says that many of the believing Jews who were zealous for the Torah, so it says that they were zealous for the Torah and they were believing. So I mean, I think that's something you could point to. Like that's nothing. Yeah, I mean that whole thing. I mean that whole thing is just straight up confusion though, because I mean you're dealing with Gentiles following Torah today, like with the Torah movement, versus like that was just for the Jews. Like they weren't, Gentiles were never part of that covenant, so they were never to be following the Torah. So it's just complete misapplication in my eyes.
You don't think the Gentiles ever were supposed to follow the Torah?
Not the Torah of Moses, no. Like,
what do you think it said? I mean, like in the Old Testament, it said that even the heathen could join one law.
Oh no, they could, but the thing is, so like the Gentile could join, but it was through circumcision. Like they actually had to be yoked to Israel. So and at that point they were no longer really considered a Gentile. They would have been like a proselyte or because so there is a difference between the proselyte even and the God-fearer. The God-fearer feared Yahweh, but he remained a Gentile and just kind of, had faith in Yahweh. But the proselyte actually, they underwent circumcision and they weren't really considered a Gentile anymore. They were, they not necessarily 100% standing, it seemed, as a Jew, but they were part of, more or less part of Israel at that point. But no Gentile or God-fearer was ever part of that covenant, or even, what I'm saying? Like, so that's what I'm saying. Unless you came into Israel, like, and got circumcised, like you weren't to be really keeping the Torah, or you had no obligation to as part of that covenant.
There's also like because you've got the sacrificing of lambs and goats and things. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12, it says, "And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask from you, but only to fear the Lord your God and to go in all his ways and to love him and to serve him, your God, from your entire heart and from your entire soul." But then if you look in Micah chapter 6, in verse 7, it says, "Will the Lord accept thousands of rams or 10,000s of fat goats?" The Masoretic says, or 10,000 rivers of oil. "Should I give my firstborn for ungodliness, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul?" But it says in verse 8, "Has it not been told to you, O man, what is good? Or what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love mercy and to be ready to walk with the Lord your God?" In Hosea 6:6.
I guess I'm a little confused because in Micah 6:8, they were still doing the sacrifices.
Yeah, just like in Hosea 6:6. And this is the response. It says, "For I desire mercy rather than sacrifice, and the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings."
How are you thinking that would like help show people that they shouldn't be doing the law of Moses? Like,
because he didn't accept it then when they were trying to do righteousness under the law, which Paul talks about. So he didn't accept it then, and God is not one to change. They love that one. So why would he change now and accept these burnt offerings and stuff if you're looking for the law for your own righteousness' sake? Whereas clearly he said before, "I desire mercy and sacrifice."
And that was in Hosea 6, you said?
6:6. It's got to be significant, right? Because it's 6:6.
So then I'd have to go with that and then basically kind of jump to Hebrews, showing that there's no more sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Hebrews 8 or 9?
That's 9, I think. The once for all sacrifice.
Rob, there's a lot of verses that show that the old covenant is the law. It's very important, because if the old covenant is the law, then the law is old. If you know what I'm saying, if the old covenant is gone and we're in the new covenant and the old covenant is the law, then that's proof right there that we don't follow the old covenant.
What were you thinking? Maybe did you have some verses in mind at all, or?
Yeah. There's a lot. Deuteronomy 4.
Yeah, I'm sure you're pretty good at that.
There's actually a whole bunch of them. If you want, I'll just send them. But for example, Deuteronomy 4:13. So he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, the 10 commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. Verses like that equate the law with the old covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically the 10 commandments too.
But the counter then, like saying like, okay, that's not anymore then.
I really don't know how they can counter that.
No, I mean, how would we counter it saying that the law is done away with?
Oh, well, you're not under the old covenant.
Well, his whole point is that we should be, though.
One good verse also is 1 Samuel 15:22, because it talks about the original transgression of the Israelites in the wilderness. Because they didn't want to hear God's voice. They said, we don't want to hear his voice lest we die. Moses, you go up, you do it, Right. And so in 1 Samuel 15:22, it says, and Samuel said, does the Lord want whole burnt offerings and sacrifices as compared to hearing the voice of the Lord? No, behold, hearkening is better than sacrifice, and heeding over the fat of rams.
And then we could go like a better covenant. Good one, Stacy.
I guess you'd have to go one further, Rob, to your point, and show them that we are in the new covenant, because you're right. They do say that we aren't in the new covenant yet.
Mm-hmm.
Some say that the new covenant is the renewed covenant, so that they look at the Ezekiel temple and stuff like that.
Be right back. I'm still here, yeah.
Yeah, that renewed covenant thing seems to be an attempt to just bring back the law. Now we have because they say we have the law written on our hearts, and they don't equate that with the giving of the Holy Spirit. They take it completely literally. And then they have to kind of disregard Paul's word.
Well, no, they don't disregard Paul. Well, some do, but they pretty much, at one point, I thought I had an answer. I don't know if Zach's still on, but I thought I had an answer for everything Paul made sound like the law was done away with, was just a misinterpretation that he was teaching the law. And I literally had an answer for every little thing you could think of. And I made like a whole series of videos. It was that... Paul's hard to understand, and basically you don't understand him, and I do. And the Torah teacher will say, well, I understand Paul. We don't understand Paul.
One of the biggest proofs that Paul really is teaching that the law is done away with, and we serve in the new way of the Spirit now, as opposed to the old way of the letter, which is what he literally says. But when he asks, what then? Shall we then sin? The only way that he would even ask the question, preempting what somebody might say, is if he just said, there's no more law. That is the only logical reason why he would ask, or preempt the question, what then shall we sin?
I don't get what you're saying.
In other words,
normally I read this the opposite.
In other words, if Paul says, listen, guys, there's no more law, if he just came right out and just said, "There's no more law,"
Mm-hmm.
he would preempt the question from the objector on the other side, who would come back and say, "Well, what should we then sin?" Because that's what they all say. What? There's no more law? Oh, okay. You're just saying that there's lawlessness and we could just go sin, right? Well, Paul
You're just saying
knows.
that his question basically demands it in itself. Then,
Right. Paul knows that that's what the objector to the law being abolished is going to say. So he preempts
He
it and says,
always anticipates the question. He did it
right,
with when he's talking about the will, that about vessels of wrath and everything, and then he preempts the question and anticipates. Well, why do we do anything then?
right,
He says, "Who are you, O pot?" So he's always anticipating what the response will be, and then he addresses that response. Because I mean, it was difficult for him just to jot down something and hire a scribe or have that, and then send that by horse to someone, and then for them to respond. So he's automatically going to anticipate what your response is, so that he can have a whole debate with you without you having to be there.
right, because he knows that his point sounds outlandish. So, but it's not in his mind, because he knows what the Lord had in mind to do away with the old covenant and bring in the Holy Spirit instead. But to me, that when he says, "What," you might say, "What then shall we sin?" It literally proves that he just said, "There's no more law."
let's see how Hebrew roots would say that. They'd say like, "So what then? Should we break the law?" Certainly not.
Right.
Mm. So they kind of just interpret a little bit different. And then I think 1 John 3:4 is the big one. I remember right. It's been a while since I defended the anyone who sins breaks God's law. Yes, sinning is the same as living against God's law. So they say, obviously you're not supposed to break, and God's law was the Old Testament law. Specifically, it's not Christ's law in this particular verse.
Well, I would just say that, there's this idea of desire. What does God desire? Did God desire the Israelites to disobey him and to create a golden calf and to not hear his voice?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to use those arguments, Jason. I think those are pretty solid, I think I try to always pick things that are easy to grasp. I try to stay away from the difficult, because I try to approach it like, how would I like to figure it, and I do good on grades, but a lot of times I don't grab concepts very easy, so I try to keep it easy for people.
I try to do that. I'm not always successful, but I try.
Yeah, I think that'll be a real easy one for people to relate to. If God, why didn't he want it then? Why would he want it in the future,
Mm-hmm. God doesn't change. They love that. You got to bring that up almost every time you make a point. Then you say that.
Well, I got a few more here. So you still awake, Zach? I'll take that as he's sleeping. Have you been looking at any more full preterist stuff at all, Matthew, or kind of just been on the shelf for a while?
Yeah, it's on the shelf next to the flat Earth.
Just Matthew, to tie up some loose ends. Did you look at my post?
Which one?
Because you said that you were kind of going back and forth between 2 Peter 3 about your understanding of how it is, and I saw this afterwards, but it's Ezekiel 22.
I looked quick at that. I haven't had much time. because I've been working a lot, but I did look quick.
Because you've got furnace to blow fire on, to melt it. I will put you in and melt you and blow on you with fire, and you shall be melted. That's verses 17 through 22. And then in Malachi chapter 4, verses 1 through 4, it says, burning like an oven will be stubble, shall set them ablaze, for there will be ashes under the soles of your feet. So, because, I mean, you do recognize that it's covenantal language in the Old Testament. So here's clear references of fire being judgment, in that sense.
Yeah,
not
no,
literal.
the language is the same. But I do see, I'm not one of those dual prophecy guys. Prophecies have two fulfillments. I don't believe that.
Right.
But at the same time, I do see like a parallel between Israel being destroyed and like we had mentioned this before. I had said Israel to me seems to be like a microcosm of the world. God dealt with just Israel, and within Israel there were believers, unbelievers at the same time. Not all Israel is Israel, like Paul says in Romans 9:6. And then at the end of Israel, all of the wood, hay, and stubble are destroyed. And the ones who believe are saved. I do see a parallel of that at the second coming. And I was looking again, like while you guys were talking, I was looking where Rob brought up, he asked me about Daniel 12 and what I thought. And, verse 1 is definitely 70 AD. Verse 2 could be if there is a physical bodily resurrection in the future, then verse 2 would have to be an allusion to it. It would have to be like an interjection, kind of like when Jesus says, and I'll raise them up at the last day. He just kind of like throws it in there. All who come to me, the Father has given me, and I'll raise them up at the last day. It doesn't really fit, but it's just something he throws in there. It would have to be that. But
so you're kind of thinking it's like a literal fire, that the whole earth will be burned up, and
I think Peter is talking about a literal fire burning up the earth. That's the way I read it. And
what if I could show you in the Old Testament where it talks about burning up the whole earth, but there'd be people left having children and growing plants and still sinners after the fire?
It's probably not the whole earth in the original language. I'm sure it pertains to the land, whether it's ghee or. But like I said, that whatever verse you're talking about probably is talking about 70 AD. Has to be.
See, he recognizes the Old Testament is all about 70 AD, but some parts of the New Testament he's saying is not.
Yeah, like
right. But I mean, you don't think that it's talking about the same fire, the day of the Lord, the return of Christ?
No, if there's a parallel, like I'm saying, see, you missed that heated debate we had a few nights ago.
And he wasn't heated. We were gracious.
No, definitely. But
we said we loved each other a lot of times in there.
Well, me and Zach got heated earlier, but I still love him. So.
But what I was trying to say, and I love Zach for at least understanding my point. What I was saying is, and Zach repeated it almost as better than I could say it. He said, okay, so Matt, I understand that you see everything in the Old Testament and the Gospels pertaining to 70 AD, but you don't see that in the epistles. And that's exactly what I see. I don't see 1 Corinthians 15 talking about fleeing from Jerusalem and going to the mountains. And, you don't see any of that in the epistles. You basically see that in the Gospels. You don't see it in the book of Acts either.
What do you do? Like, I'm sure I showed this before, and am I still sharing my screen? I don't even know. Yeah. Okay. In Isaiah 65, it says, "For behold, I create a new heavens and new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come to mind." Uh, you would think this was talking about the new heavens and new earth in Revelation, right?
Right. Covenant.
So you don't think this is talking about the literal new heavens and new earth?
No, but as in opposition to that, I think Peter, he talks about the old heaven and earth being perished by flood, and he compares it to the current heaven and earth being destroyed by fire. And what I see there is two physical heaven and earths being compared to how they're going to be destroyed. Now Zach kept coming back and saying, "Well, that first heaven and earth is not talking about the flood because perished." Well, the heaven and earth didn't perish; it was just flooded, which I don't really
Yeah,
see
it's
how.
talking about because you have to go back to verse 2. Let's see.
Where
Who
are you?
was 2 Peter 2? So who was destroyed in that first world?
You're talking about people, animals, trees. It's not just who. The trees were not part of a covenant.
Right, but here who? So I mean, when it says bring the flood upon the world of the ungodly,
Mm-hmm.
do you think the trees were ungodly?
No, but the land perished. Everything was pretty much destroyed. It was laid waste by water.
Yeah, but it doesn't take long for that to regrow. I mean, he didn't. The main purpose was to destroy the people. It wasn't to destroy the earth.
Right? Well, did those people have a covenant, or were they just people outside of God's covenant? It's not like, like when in 70 AD, God destroyed the old covenant. We all know that. He destroyed the people of the covenant.
Mm-hmm.
He destroyed the temple of the covenant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the flood, he just destroyed everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So where does the covenant? It's not like he's destroying an old covenant to make a new one in the flood.
I
So
guess don't get what you're saying. You're saying that they can't relate because one wasn't destroying the covenant, and then since the other one's not, then they can't relate, basically.
I mean, I'm just reading it. I think you have to read into it to say this is not talking about physical things getting destroyed by water. I think you have to read into it to come up with that. I think the plain surface reading of the text is God destroyed the earth with a flood.
Well, read verse 7 and 2 Peter 3:7 though. Who does the day of the judgment come against?
Where are you? 2 Peter 3:7?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man. I don't
Why?
see the righteous being burned up.
So 2 Peter 3:7, the heavens and earth which are now preserved by the same word are reserved for fire till the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. So these are people who are outside of a covenant. They're reserved for fire.
Right, they're burned up, but the righteous aren't burned up.
Right, because
But
they're
you think the whole
resurrected.
but you're thinking the whole earth is going to be burned up. That means me and you too.
No, because in partial preterism, there's a bodily resurrection. You're being caught up to the air. You're lifted up off the earth. I don't
So
believe we go to heaven.
you would be saved from the fire then, but
Of course.
so you think like we're raptured or caught up, and then everyone else is burned. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I wouldn't call it a rapture, but it's definitely a gathering. I mean, rapture just became a dirty word if you're not dispensational anymore, but it's a resurrection.
So let me just ask you real quick, since we're on 2 Peter, verse 10, but the day of the Lord.
Mhm.
It was that 70 AD day of the Lord, or is that something else day of the Lord?
Well, I don't think 70 AD came like a thief in the night. It was prophesied. The exact timing was given by Daniel.
Right, but a thief in the night, you don't know what hour he comes. All you know is in the morning when you wake up, he's visited you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, where, in partial preterism, where they hold to the eye, I mean, they hold to the belief that every eye shall see and every ear shall hear, the coming day of the Lord type thing. But yet here it says, that the day of the Lord shall come like a thief in the night. It's like, you don't realize the thief was there until you wake up. Oh, the arrival's already come.
Well, it's going to be tough to. I mean, if I can't use the Old Testament to show what this is talking about,
Yeah, it will be tough.
It's going to be tough to change Matthew's view, because can't think of anything offhand. Because to me, there isn't two day of the Lords. There's only the one day of the Lord. The one mentioned in the Old Testament matches the one talking about in the New Testament. There is no two day of the Lords, and it should be saying days of the Lord or something like that.
Let's see.
I'm just trying to see if there's anything in here that kind of jumps on me just in these verses.
I hear yelling in the background. Is that a recording of us debating the other night?
Nah, my brother just came home. He's watching YouTube on his phone.
Actually, your and Zach's dialogue tonight was far more animated than Albert's and Matthew's.
I don't think iron sharpening iron is necessarily a soft blow.
Yeah, it does make a sound. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I see you guys' points, but in 3:11, what is he trying to say? Therefore, since the old covenant will be dissolved, is how you guys would say it or would read it. What manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? What sense does that make?
Well, it was saying that the destruction's coming. The second coming. His is coming soon, and your salvation is coming soon. So be spotless when he returns. And I have to agree with him on that they were caught up, and so their salvation did come. He said that he was coming for them.
You believe with our mind that all the Christians were resurrected in 70 AD? No Christians were left on the earth?
I do believe that they would have been caught up.
If you trace the the church all the way back through the church fathers to the apostles, you know, how did they get taught if the apostles were taken up in 70 AD? Who started the whole teaching again?
Well,
They had the remaining scripture.
Yeah, the only people I can look to is Polycarp and who's the other guy that claimed that Peter taught him. There was only two, Polycarp and is it Justinus? I'm saying the name wrong.
But they had all those copies and copies of the scriptures. And then at that point, you saw the early church or the church fathers would start to actually make a comment on each one and try to understand it and make a commentary on each verse, which is a lot of the ways.
A lot of times they were taking it wrong too.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they were directly taught, how did they get it so wrong?
Hippolytus said you've got to be baptized naked, you've got to fast for that week, you've got to be in a river, and one elder will anoint the oil of exorcism on you, and then the other elder will come, and then you get dunked, you come back up, and then the other elder will anoint you with the oil of spirit, and then you get dunked again. It's incredible.
Ignatius, Clement of Rome. So Clement of Rome was supposedly, I believe, taught by Peter, wasn't he? Let's see.
It's almost like I see that the world was left a bunch of orphans. But God shows that he's very concerned for the orphans. But if you don't recognize that you're an orphan, he won't come to you.
So all it is says, few details are known about Clement's life. Clement was said to have been consecrated by St. Peter, but it doesn't seem like there's much proof other than said. But, you know, it'd be one thing if they're like, okay, yeah, they're hanging out together. We got some writing of it.
I haven't read 1st and 2nd Clement in several years, so I'm going to remain silent.
But to me, it makes sense that they were caught up because there pretty much wasn't any more writing. But then you could argue that, you know, there wasn't any more writing because they died as well. But you would think there would be more writings.
More apostolic epistles to the churches continuing.
Well, you would think there'd be more prophecy too. You know, we don't have any more prophecy after Revelation. That was it.
Why would there be? There doesn't really need to be any more prophecy. Everything that was written, like Luke 21 says, everything that was written was fulfilled in 70 AD. What wasn't written in the Old Testament was what would happen afterward.
I think it was written in the Old Testament in several places. Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah. I think they all talk about the second coming.
You know, the Universalists have a similar understanding, Matt, that they say that, well, this Bible narrative is within a particular period of time, and it doesn't express what's to happen afterwards, and therefore that's why they say that the all-consuming fire burns away all of your impurities and everyone will be saved.
Let me read this just short chapter to you and see if it sounds like the second coming. Zechariah 14. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations when he fought in the day of the battle. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and towards the west. There shall be a very great valley. Half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it towards the south. And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains. For the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal, Yea, and ye shall flee like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, King Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee. And it shall come to pass in that day, the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day or night. But it shall come to pass at the evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day the living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea in the summer, and winter it shall be. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day there shall be one Lord, and his name one. And the land shall be turned as plain from Gibeah to Rimmon south to Jerusalem, and it shall be lifted up, inhabited in her place from Benjamin's gate unto the place of the first gate, unto the corner gate, the tower of Hanel, unto the king's winepress. And men shall dwell in it. There shall be no more utter destruction. Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. And this shall be the plague wherein the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet. Their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And it shall come to pass in that day, a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them. And they shall lay hold every one on hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. And Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem. The wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance. And so shall be the plague of the horse, the mule, the camel, of the ass, all the beasts shall be in the tents of this plague. And shall come to pass, everyone that is left of the nations which came against Jerusalem shall go up year to year to worship the King, Lord of hosts, and keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it shall be those who not come up the families of earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not and have no rain, there shall be the plague, wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen, come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This shall be the punishment of Egypt, the punishment of all the nations that come up not to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And that day there shall be upon the bells of the horses holiness to the Lord, and pots in the Lord's house shall be like bowls before the altar. Yea, every pot in Jerusalem and Judah shall be holiness unto the Lord of hosts. And all that they sacrifice shall come and take of them seed therein, and that day there shall be no more Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts. That doesn't sound like the second coming to you.
Well, which second coming are you talking about?
Like there'll be one Lord over all the earth.
Again,
and that there'll be a living waters going out of Jerusalem. I mean, don't you see that parallel to Revelation?
Now, if this were talking about a literal, physical second coming of Christ, well, then I would be correct. If it's only talking about 70 AD being fulfilled in a spiritual sense, then it's fine. Because I do believe most of the Old Testament prophecies are talking about 70 AD, if not all of them.
What did you mean, like you'd be correct? Maybe you could expand on that, what you're thinking.
So, like, you're trying to say to me that, Zach, that this chapter is talking about a literal second coming. But at the same time, you're trying to convince me that full preterism is true and there is no literal second coming.
I believe there's a literal second coming. I believe the mountain split in half, just like it said. I have pictures of it split in half all the way to the Valley of Azal, just like it shows.
I mean a future literal second coming.
Well, it was future at one point in time, but now it's all past. I guess I don't know what you mean, but like, what would be the difference if it was future at one point, now it's all happened, compared to future in the future?
So let's back up. You're saying that this chapter is talking about a physical second coming of Christ, which was in 70 AD.
Right. Like in this verse here where it says, It shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day or night, but it shall come to pass at evening time it shall be light. Well, when that happened, Josephus wrote at evening, it was a miracle. It was like the sun was up, but it was nighttime. It shouldn't happen, but it did happen. And then, like where it talks about his feet shall stand on the Mount Olives and split. There's photographs from, I want to say, the 40s or 50s. I can't remember, before vegetation started growing over it, and you can see the literal split that happened.
But did anybody see his literal feet on the mountain?
I think, yeah, but
Did anybody see
you'd have to have a photograph.
those people who are all the Christians who were resurrected? So Jesus told them to flee to the mountains,
Right?
to not be destroyed by the Romans, so that God could just resurrect them. Why couldn't God just resurrect them? Why'd they have to flee?
Well, they were caught up. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed by the Romans. But I see what you mean. Why can he just resurrect them instead of, he was saving them from the punishment, basically. I mean, how would you like to be tortured and killed? How would you like that to be your death? So I think that's fair that he had them flee.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, the resurrection that Paul is talking about in 1 Corinthians 15 being all the believers getting resurrected in 70 AD, and we are just like, post individual resurrection, makes no sense. Paul is saying in 1 Corinthians 15, we all will be changed in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. Very, very clear language. 1 Corinthians, but
it was all for them, not all for us.
Well, what do you mean for them? We are.
Their salvation was just about ready to come, it says. And so the salvation came for them, all of them, at that point in time. It was all. And now, from that point in time.
Yeah, you limit Paul's we in Ephesians chapter 1. So here when he's talking about we in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, you want to extend that we?
Yeah, but in context, there's a reason why I limited it.
Well, you're just trying to include yourself, and the Bible does have verses that include those after the second coming. There's verses that talk about people like us. I believe it's Revelation 14. Let's see. Okay,
I hate to cut the debate short, but I'm going to be here a few more minutes because I got to get up early.
Yeah, I hear you. So the second coming happens, and then let's say you or I die. It says, and I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, right, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth, being any time after the second coming. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them.
Smoke of the torment ascended up forever and ever. I have no rest day or night.
And that's why in verse 6 it says,
what about all the people who never get saved? Most people, actually.
Uh-huh.
Um,
What happens to them?
they have no wrath. Like, they just die and go away.
They get burned up, yeah. I think the Bible talks about them as well, and that they actually get a little bit more leniency in this lifetime than maybe you or I would, because they're living for this life only.
How do they get burned up?
When they die, they have the second death.
So when they die, they're really not dead. They get burned up somehow.
No, when they die, they have to answer to God. They have to bow, and then they die, and then they experience the second death.
Annihilation.
Exactly. Where we don't have to experience the second death.
So their spirit, not their body, but their spirit burns up.
Everything burns up.
Yeah, I mean, their body would be, a funeral. They would get laid in the ground or burned up or whatever, and then there'd be the burning, the second burning, or the second death, where everything about them is burned up, and God doesn't remember them anymore. We don't remember them anymore. They're annihilated.
See, in the first century, though, they had the wrath of God come out upon them, so they had to suffer before they died. In wars and famines, they had to eat their own flesh, things like that. So now their leniency is that they just get death and annihilation.
That's why I think Revelation 14:6. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. So the gospel keeps going on forever for people on earth after the second coming. Because if you look at...
It's funny that this is the three angels' messages, and this is paramount in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that they are preaching the three angels' messages, but they don't believe that Christ has come yet. But it's really ironic that they're preaching the everlasting gospel.
See, like in 1 Peter 1:10, it says, the prophets studied carefully and tried to learn about the salvation. They spoke about the grace that was coming to you. So it was about to come in their lifetime. And then in, I think it's 2:19. Let me go back here. Okay, 1 Peter 1:19 through 20. You were bought with the precious blood of Christ's death. He was a pure and perfect sacrificial lamb. Christ was chosen before the world was made, but he was shown to the world in these last times for you. So it was for them. And then in Matthew 16:27, it says, believe, talking about coming with his angels. So we know that's the judgment. Believe me when I say that there are some people standing here who will see the Son of Man coming with his kingdom before they die. And that was, referring to his second coming. This is a pretty one, I think it here. 1 Peter 4:7. The time is near when all things will end. So keep your minds clear, control yourselves. This will help you in your prayers. So it was saying, maybe I should not do the easy reading version. I mean, that's pretty plain, but King James. But the end of all things is at hand. Be therefore sober and watch unto prayer. So, I mean, the end of all things was near. And what Peter 2 was his second epistle, reminding him of everything he had taught him in his first epistle. It was just a reminder.
Well, all right, brethren. I really gotta go. So
Yeah,
till next
I
time.
got to go to work tomorrow too. Good night, guys.
God
Night,
bless.
brothers. God bless.